Good morning. This is Barry Knapp with Ironsides Macroeconomics. It's Monday morning, December 15th. Hanukkah began last night. Christmas is drawing closer, and the sort of walls are closing in on us, trying to write two more big year-end reports. Our macro themes report that we intend to get out on Wednesday, though that may prove a little bit ambitious. We'll do our best. And then our year in review note that we're hoping to get out on Christmas Eve, and we do think we'll meet those deadlines. We did get out a little longer note than we expected to on Friday, in part because the lovely New York weather last week imparted us with a cold, and I ended up turning my two Boston meetings on Friday morning into Zooms this week, and sitting in my brother's office writing a note in Cambridge, Mass. On Friday. So anyway, the response to our Outlook note has been nothing short of exceptional. As we historically do, we, with a week's lag, release that to the free subscribers, and and thanks to Andy Constant, got bounced around Twitter as well, and we've gotten quite a bit of feedback on it. But more importantly, our feedback from our meetings in New York last week was quite good, and I cover that at the end of the QE restarts note that we published on Saturday morning. So the structure of that note was we reviewed the FOMC meeting. There was a couple of pieces of important data we thought last week that we wanted to discuss. The September trade numbers, although it's obviously stale, and the JOLTS report that ran through October. We thought both of those were worth commenting on and had important go-forward implications. The recent underperformance of tech, and then just wrapping up with some thoughts from the road. So first of all, this won't be a surprise to all of you, but we've been very specific about defining QE as the quantity of money. Reserve management, to us, fits the definition of QE. Now, we have some sympathy for Chairman Powell's assertion that this isn't a big monetary action or won't have monetary implications. That's true somewhat. We've pointed that the first round of real QE in the modern era from the Bank of Japan back in the early 2000s, when they injected 30 trillion yen into the banking system, that much of which actually wound up arbitraging, if you will, or putting on U.S. yield curve steepeners, had no impact on the Japanese banking system or Japanese economy, even after they recapitalized the Japanese banks in 2002. So we're sympathetic to that idea that it's really a technical operation. But they gave themselves latitude to go out to 3 years. And that would be duration easing if they ended up buying 2s and 3s, because 2s and 3s would influence 5s and would influence the belly of the curve, and would play, again, a role. We also went on to discuss how we really are against the Fed being a counterparty to virtually every interbank transaction. They've gotten just too big a role, and they do it under the guise of, well, it allows them to control the policy rate. We don't really want the Fed controlling anything, quite frankly. They're there to be a lender of last resort. We would have much preferred that they were a little more patient on this, and we're suspicious of them as well, in as much as when they reduced QT last March, they had met none of the hurdles that they'd set down. People like Roberto Perli, who runs the SOMA portfolio for the New York Fed, had laid out some 5 different metrics. They hadn't met any of them, yet they cut QT. They hinted they were going to cut it to 30 from 85, I guess, and they cut it to 25. And then when they ended it, they hadn't met any of those real hurdles either. They were getting a little bit of tightening in repo, but they ended it. And now they restarted the reserve management stuff all before anyone thought was necessary. We would have much preferred that they allowed bank regulatory relief to play out, and there was less demand for reserves, and they wouldn't have any tightening of repo and worrying about repo over the term and all over the turn, at the end of the years. It's all sort of goofy. I know people get worked up. Maybe Beth Hammock and Lori Logan got worked up about it and convinced the committee to do it, but we just don't understand why. And we don't want the Fed sitting as the central arbiter of all of this. We know what happened to my firm, Lehman Brothers, when J.P. Morgan tightened the credit on us, and we had sufficient collateral when they were performing their lender, they being the Fed, were performing their lender of last resort role by expanding the range of collateral eligible for what was known as the primary dealer credit facility. But Hank Paulson, not even Ben Bernanke, decided, no, I need a political scapegoat. Lehman's it. Lehman dies. And then that just triggered the whole crisis from that point. So having government in control of this, Hayek's rolling over in his grave with his rule of law dynamic, to have just one person wake up on the wrong side of the bed and decide this is going to happen is a really dangerous thing for a global capital market system. So enough on that. Obviously, the market took the press conference pretty well. And the reason we think the market took the press conference well is because of Powell's characterization of inflation and employment. And notably, he discussed something we've been discussing for quite some time, years now, which is the overestimation of the birth-death model. He used a 60,000 per month number. The actual number through a year ago, March, was 79,000. I think he's assuming it'll be revised down like it was the prior year, but that's not necessarily so. And we think it may have gotten bigger since March, given that the demand for labor has gotten weaker. So, yeah, the labor market is contracting. We also think the unemployment rate's probably a little higher than is indicated by the unemployment rate, because the BLS also struggled with population over the last few years. The immigration surge they did not capture particularly well, and that pushed the unemployment rate down a year ago. So the labor market is clearly weak. And he made an interesting point, which is the committee agrees that tariffs are not the inflationary force that they originally thought they were going to be, and that the labor market is weak. And so they agree on the economic outlook. They don't agree on rate policy. Strikes me as a little curious, but that notwithstanding, and we know some of the source of the division is people like Hammock, I keep picking on her, thinking that they should be using rate policy to impact financial stability and stock prices and the like. And we think that's absolutely ass backwards, that they should be focused on the balance sheet, which is really what's going to impact stock prices. It's the belly of the curve that you price stock prices off, not the front end. So anyway, we do think that the November and December data could very well and may most likely will lead to another cut in January. And that'll get that 3-month 10-year curve, those deposit rates down. Remember, it's not the forwards that matter for regional banks. They got to get deposit rates down. That 3-month 10-year curve is out beyond 50 basis points right now. So we should get higher ROE, and we'll see if we get any response in bank lending and small bank accumulation of securities. But if another cut, 2 cuts is what we expect for next year, then that curve will be back above 100 basis points, and that will put those small banks in a much better position. So as far as the trade stuff goes, we could get an IEEPA decision any day. We continue to think that they will declare it as, the Supreme Court will declare it as the use of IEEPA as unlawful, though a conversation with a law professor, family member of ours up in Boston last week had us a little less convinced that that would be the case. But our family member agreed that the remedy would fall way short of forcing the government to make refunds to the tariffs that have already been collected. We got the September trade data, and when we've had budgetary data that shows us that revenues from tariffs have leveled off. They're creeping up a little, but they were at $31 billion in the month of November. They were at 29 in August or so. So they've kind of settled in around 30, and the effective tariff rate at about 12. and we think that the administration would be reticent to go above 15 in any cases. So the tariff economic shock is over. We do not know how it's going to affect the trade balance. The trade balance has fallen as of late, but we're a little bit reluctant to conclude that that's going to be the new trend. We'll see whether it does incent onshoring and whether import substitution and the like. We're a little less convinced of that, but we are convinced that the economic shock is through. The JOLTS report was not a strong report. We know that the headline openings number was pretty good, but there was a 332,000 increase in small business openings over the 2-month period. We're really dubious about that. We think that it's the same problem with the birth death model, which they use to calculate those openings. The hiring rate is at cycle low. The quits rate is at cycle low, and the layoff rate has picked up over the last few months, and it's about 250,000 more layoffs. So layoffs are creeping up. They are not low given where the unemployment rate is. They're actually about where they should be, and there's a risk again of this non-linearity, rapid increase in the unemployment rate. So Fed should be using policy to deal with that. Again, our approach here is reduce duration to deal with financial stability, but cut policy rates to reopen the credit channel for small banks and small businesses. So tech's been struggling, and to us it looks like it's net revisions that are driving it. It's the rate of change of earnings growth or earnings estimates that has stalled, and pardon me, that's likely to continue through at least next earnings season. So that trend will probably continue a bit here, and then we'll just wrap it up with our thoughts from the road. As I said, the feedback to the outlook note was favorable. Most people agreed that the economy will pick up steam next year, but that transition will likely put pressure on rates, the supply of credit, or demand for credit, I guess, but supply of IG credit and Gen AI related infrastructure debt is likely to surge in the first quarter, and that could put pressure on rates, causing a little bit of a real rate shock. Most, though, were confident that the Bessent Treasury would handle this better than the Yellen Treasury did. So 10s going to 5 was not really the view of most of the clients we talked to. And, on tech, clients were wary about the stocks, but not so much about the boom being near its end. So anyway, we'll work on that macro themes note. It's a fun one for us to write. Hopefully we'll come up with some clever ideas, and you'll all enjoy that. We'll try and get it out on Wednesday if we can. Barry Knapp from Ironsides. Have a good week, everyone. Thank you.